Hi, Michelle. Do you need help getting anything set up?
I think we're good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep.
All right. I do. You're perfect. I'm just going to mute the microphones for now. So I see Eric is signing in. You can test with the people who are signing in, but you won't be able to hear council until we get a little closer.
Okay, sounds good.
I don't know.
Eric, can you hear us?
I could hear you.
Okay. Is your camera working now or?
Let's see.
Oh, that is much better than it was. Yeah. Much better than it was earlier today.
Yeah. So well, this isn't Microsoft Teams either. So.
Yeah. Well, I wonder what happened with that. That was strange.
I don't know. It logged in weirdly when I clicked on that link.
Okay.
I know it tries to open an app on my computer sometimes, but then says we're not set up for it or something like that.
Okay. So I see Tom just logged in. I don't know what Tom that is. Tom, can you hear us? No. Jennifer, are you on? Can you hear us?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. You're kind of quiet. I don't know if you're presenting tonight at all or anything, but.
Let me check something. Does that sound better?
It's a little strange, kind of like muffled a little bit. Talk a little bit more.
Let me go. Actually, I'll change my headphones. It might be my mic on here getting bad. 1 second.
Actually, it's a little bit better now that you spoke up. I think that's okay. But yeah, change them and see what happens.
Is that better, Beth?
Not really. Go again. Try again.
Okay. How is that?
That's okay. I mean, I can hear you okay. I think that'll be all right.
Okay. I am getting a few messages that I've got network connection difficulties, so I'm not sure what's going on right now, but so it might be on my end.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. We can hear you though, so.
Okay, I don't have anything specific to present, so it'll just be unless there's any questions, so should be okay.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
7 even.
This conference will now be recorded.
All right, we're live. Let's call the meeting in order. And Michelle, can you take roll call?
Mayor Horn,
Here.
Alderman Kittle,
Here.
Alderman Breeze,
Present.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Here.
Alderman Montello,
Here.
Alderman Volkert,
Here.
Alderman Kraft.
Here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Flag of the United States, republic for which it stands.
Mr. Mayor, I'll offer a motion that we adopt the agenda.
Want to make any,
Want to make a change?
do we want to make any
So-
changes to that?
Under new business, we'll do 8.5 before, so we're going to end up doing 8.5, 8.1, and 8.2 before old business. And then once those three are done, then we're going to jump to old business and come back to the regular order. If that's okay with the council.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we adopt the agenda as changed.
Second?
The motion and a second to adopt the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Right, carried. And public comments. I'm going to turn it over to the chief for Police Week updates.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. As you're all aware, this week is National Memorial Police Week, with Memorial Day for police officers on May 15th. They will be moving some of the nationally recognized events from Police Week due to COVID into this fall. I can provide you with those dates as they come. But as you may or may not know, 2020 was a tough year on law enforcement. There was over, according to American Police Beat, 359 lives lost in the line of duty, which is the most ever in police history. There was also 29 canines lost their lives in 2020, which is incredibly high. Normally we run around 130 to 140 officers that lose their lives. There's a big push to try to get that number below 100. This was almost 100% increase over last year of the amount of officers that lost their lives. So we appreciate you keeping all law enforcement officers in your thoughts and prayers. Over the course of the next week, all our New Richmond officers are wearing their morning badge covers to honor those that have given the ultimate sacrifice over not only the last year, but all the names that are on the memorial out in Washington, D.C.
Chief, are they having an event this year?
They are doing a virtual candlelight vigil on the 13th, and then they'll move the actual Police Week events out in D.C. where they unveil the names that will go on the wall into October, I think it is, middle of October. Thank you.
Anything else? All right, thank you. Does anybody else want to make any public comments? Nobody approaching. We have the consent agenda. It's a long one.
Yeah, I would make a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
All right, there's a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Did you say as amended?
As presented.
Oh, as presented. Sorry, I didn't hear you. I got to turn my speaker up here.
Please do.
That didn't take long.
That passes. And so it brings us to new business 8.5, which is the Fox Run 3rd Edition preliminary and final plat applications.
Good evening,
Thank
Mayor
you,
Horn.
and
Beth Thompson, our Community Development Director, will take the lead on this. Thanks, Beth.
thank you. I was wondering, Michelle, if we could put up one of the slides just so we can show everyone kind of where this was at. Do you have that, or would you like me to do it?
I can pull that up.
Okay, so to start off, we have a preliminary and final plat application from Alliant Ventures X LLC. They're going to be putting in Fox Run 3rd edition, and they're going to be doing 16 single-family homes and 8 twin homes in this area. And so I just want to give you a visual if Michelle's got this pulled up. Michelle, it's like the 3rd slide. This is the site location, as you can see up there in red. That's where those will be going. And then the next slide, Michelle, just to give them an idea. So this is, as I said, 16 single-family homes, 8 twin homes. Lot widths meet our ordinances along with the setbacks. They will be finishing the street, which is Squirrel Way in between here. And the utilities, grading, and park dedications have been met. One more slide, Michelle. So we've brought this through the DRC and the Planning Commission, and we recommend approval for the City Council for the preliminary and final plat for Fox Run 3rd edition with the conditions listed in the memo from Dan Licht, our city planner.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to offer a motion that we approve this preliminary and final plat for Fox Run 3rd edition, subject to the conditions, which number 11. Is that correct, Beth?
That is correct. We had a couple of changes towards the end with where a new street was going. So we do have some conditions where they need to finish out a few items. Correct.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the preliminary and final plats with the additional conditions that Beth talked about. Any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Breeze,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
And that motion passes. Item 8.1 is the construction services for police department building project.
Good evening, Mayor Horn and City Council. I will start on this, and then we have a few folks here available to answer any questions you may have on this project. As you recall, earlier this spring, the City Council authorized staff to finalize design and solicit competitive bids for the construction of the building addition and interior renovation of the police department. We weren't quite sure what to expect, just given the rising cost in construction and building materials. But we did have the bid opening this past week, received very competitive pricing. The low bid was submitted by Derrick Building Solutions. Their total bid, including the alternate bids, was just over $1.25 million. The estimated project cost was just under $1.4 million. Bids were very close, so we did feel that we had competitive prices submitted. In terms of the bid itself, if you recall, we had both a base bid as well as alternate bids. One alternate was for a slightly larger garage. The other portion of the alternate bid was just to resurface a portion of the parking lot. Those alternate bids together are just over $100,000. We do feel that in the scope of the project, it would likely make sense to proceed with the alternate bid. In addition to the construction bid, this does not include furniture, the lockers for the locker room, shelving for the evidence room. Those costs would still have to go through a competitive procurement process, but we did want to make the council aware of those. We estimate there'd be some storage needed for, like I mentioned, the evidence rooms themselves, pre-evidence lockers, lockers for the law enforcement officers themselves, chairs, some equipment for the break room, some different tables, a washer and dryer, a stove for the break room, some TV display monitors. So several items that are listed in the memo. We estimate that those items together could cost upwards of $200,000. But again, we would go through a competitive procurement process. So the recommendation for the council to consider this evening would be to award the project with the alternate bids to Derrick Building Solutions in the low bid amount of $1,256,600. And then to also give staff direction to proceed with getting pricing for these other items that were discussed. So for this evening, we have Mark Paschke here from Ayers Associates. And then we also have Chief Yalick and Lieutenant Kaler here if you have any questions. So I will turn the floor back to Mayor Horn.
So does anybody have any questions?
I just,
Hey, Michelle, can I get a packet? I don't have a packet up here. Yeah.
I just want to ask, the mobile storage, it's mobile? And are we talking about a trailer, or what are we talking about?
No, the storage that we're talking about, it's, maybe modal is a better term for it, or it's actually in the middle of the evidence room, and it's movable shelving to maximize the space. Basically opens and closes so you can walk between the shelves to utilize the space as best. We've been talking about that since the beginning. That was part of the
We just called it something else.
movable storage.
Yeah,
I
the
guess
word
would be
mobile threw me there, chief.
Yeah, no, sorry about that, but it's
Got it.
it's more of a movable storage system that opens and closes to maximize that space.
Want to get a packet before
So-
motion's made?
No, I'm
So
fine.
Chief,
Go ahead.
in terms of how this is going to be paid for, this is not part of the budget for 2021, correct? Or is it part of the budget?
Is not.
No.
So staff would be
It is not.
presenting at our upcoming work session meeting, both on this and the street and utility projects, and showing sources of funds for both of these.
Okay, so is there a chance that some of the carryover funds from 2020 would be used for this, or would be looking at borrowing?
Yes, so the city council discussed rolling over those funds towards the capital projects for this year to help minimize the amount that we'd have to borrow otherwise. So that would be the intent for those remaining funds that from last year.
Okay.
But I think maybe to her point, I think, is how much are we borrowing? How much do we have to borrow for this? Do we have that number?
Yeah, so we'd be showing at the upcoming meeting. We have a couple different funding sources as well. The intent would not be to borrow for all of this. We do have, some funds that we really haven't discussed. One of those being the ARP dollars from the federal government. That amount is upwards about $900,000. We also haven't discussed how to utilize the land sale proceeds from 140th and Double G. So at our upcoming meeting, we would show, if these are the projects the council is looking to move forward with, what the sources of funds would be for both of those.
Shouldn't we
Okay,
answer that
so
question
even-
first before approving this? And I'm not saying I don't want to weigh too much in on this, but to me, I think we need to answer those questions first.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I actually feel a little bit, I understand the question. To me, the issue is, does the project merit doing?
Yep.
If it does merit doing, then we have to decide how much money we want to borrow, what's our appetite for that, and how much do we want to spend.
Yeah.
I think to Noah's point, we know we're not going to have to borrow the whole thing, but we have a street project. I was just reading through we have, is it the work session, or is it in June?
The street project is on the agenda tonight as well.
No, but the funding discussion wasn't
No,
scheduled
not
for tonight.
No, nope.
Yeah. So I get what you're saying. I'm going to offer a motion
Sure.
that we approve this project as it's outlined with the, the getting the bids for those, I'm going to call them accessories, and I'm sorry, the furnishings that are outlined in here, with the final determination on financing to be made within the next 4 to 6 weeks, but based on that. I think this project is that important that we have to commit to, we're going to spend some bonding dollars to get this done. We know we have the capacity for that, but I get your question.
So your motion is to go ahead and approve the project.
Yes.
Let's get bids out for the whatever ancillary stuff that we need, and we'll talk about how much money was got to be borrowed in the future.
Correct.
So with that understanding, is there a second to that motion?
I will second that.
I'll
The
second
motion,
it.
all right, so there's a motion second. My only point, again, don't take this as a negative, is if we're borrowing, $400,000, that may be one thing for an alderman to think about and vote on, versus we're going to be borrowing 1.2 And that was just the question. Do we know ballpark about what staff is proposing that we would borrow?
I wouldn't feel comfortable commenting on that yet tonight, but our plan would be to borrow for this project, street and utility projects. But now in discussion of how we utilize land proceeds or these federal dollars, we'd want that to be part of that conversation too. And what is the strategy? You know, is there any local borrowing? Is it going through a new bond rating process? But we have anticipated that would likely be, you know, the borrowing piece would be more in June time period. So we are planning, if the council wanted to move forward tonight with the police project and the street and utility projects, I think to Alderman Montello's point, that kind of gives us direction then for our next meeting to say, here's the sources of funds, how we utilize those, and in terms of the borrowing, is it 15 years? Is it 10? Is it 20? So we'd want to have that conversation at the next meeting.
And Mr. Mayor, I think you make a great point, because I think it's really easy for us at times to kind of make financial decisions based on not considering the numbers. I will just offer this. I think this particular project is so important that if we had to borrow all of it, and that's not what's on the table, but if we had to borrow all of it, it would still be necessary to pursue this at this time. So I think you're making a great point. But I just want to say, in light of that, that's why I'm comfortable moving ahead.
Well, I've just got a question. To the mayor's point, I understand what he's talking about. I think it's a good idea. I understand the value of this project also. Would it save us anything, or would it really get the ball rolling? Would we save a lot of time and energy if we waited to figure out where the money was coming from, how much we had to borrow, get a little bit more specific on where we're at with this? I mean, are we going to save a lot of time waiting 2 weeks or a month? I don't know. What could be done in that time frame by approving that tonight without knowing how much we're going to borrow, or waiting 2 weeks, 4 weeks to figure it out later?
2 to
Do
4
we
weeks
run-
doesn't sound like very much, but I think with construction costs going higher
Yeah,
and higher and higher by the week, waiting 4 weeks to me this project will cost more.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Are we going to be purchasing things in the next 4 weeks to lock in money and lock in time? The architect and Craig might know about this. I don't know.
Yeah, so to Alderman Viesa's point, you know, just for contractors to be able to start their scheduling, ordering materials, signing contracts, lining up their subcontractors, you know, there are a lot of pieces, and that's why even, you know, for the bidding process itself, it's not uncommon that the contractors, you know, in their car 15 minutes before the bid opening, waiting to get those final prices, just because there is such variation. So,
Well, there will be. What I'm saying is, are we going to lock prices in? If we approve this tonight, are they going to be able to lock prices in? Then it would save us time and money?
this is
we're accepting
this is
a,
the bid that they
we're accepting the
received.
bid.
We don't want to.
Go, Carrie.
No, I was just saying we're accepting a bid at the $1.256 million. So, I mean, that would, if I were to vote in favor of this tonight, that would be what I believe the cost of the project to be. So even if the price of lumber, the price of construction materials goes up before they get started, I mean, I don't think they have the ability to come back and say, actually, we're going to charge you another $500,000, even though you accepted this bid of $1.256 million, right?
I agree.
It's a contract. We're signing a contract tomorrow. You're locked in.
Right. Okay. So I just want, yeah. So I think that answers it, Craig, right? If we waited a couple of weeks, I mean, we could be looking at it that people would have to submit new bids just because the cost of materials has increased that much. And I don't know that. And
I'm not saying I wouldn't vote for this tonight either. I just wanted the clarification from an architect or somebody that's been dealing with this, where we're at with that, and would it hurt to wait?
All right, so we do have a motion and a second to, as we stated earlier, to approve the awarding of the contract and to solicit bids for the ancillary equipment. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Alderman Vries,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
Can I just ask you, Noah, what's the discussed timing of this?
So maybe Mark, if you want to comment on what I know we've talked a little bit about it.
With approval now, we'll ask Derek Building Solutions to prepare a contract for the city's review. We'll lock in this pricing, discuss scheduling of the project. Right now, the anticipated schedule would be to have the project substantially constructed and enclosed by the end of the year. Thus, that's probably one of the biggest delays is just at this point, there's no winter conditions figured for construction of the project. So getting the project in and enclosed before winter would be of primary importance.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, very good. Then 8.2, the 2021 Taxable General Obligation Promissory Note, Series 2021A for Richmond Golf Course.
Mayor Horn and City Council, this item relates to the requests we've discussed previously relating to the Richmond Golf Club. We have Sean Lentz from Ellers available virtually. So Sean, I will turn things over to you.
Thank you, Noah. Am I coming through okay? Just to double check.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I believe in your packet you have a pre-sale report that we worked with Rayanne and other city staff on. Earlier this year, Rayanne and I talked about the possibility of refinancing the outstanding taxable GO bond issue from 2011. I gave her a heads up that the issue was refinanceable as of March 1 this year. She informed me that before making a final decision on refinancing it, the city needed to discuss with the golf course the overall financial situation, as the golf course, through an agreement with the city, makes the annual debt service payments on the 2011 issue. And she also mentioned that they were looking at some additional expenditures and the concept of combining everything together. So on the page you see on the screen currently, the combination that we discussed was refinancing the 2011 bonds and at the same time issuing new money financing for golf course equipment and combining it into a single 10-year GO promissory note issue that would fully amortize the debt in that 10-year period. If you, I think it's Michelle, if you can move forward to Exhibit 1 of the pre-sale report.
I will. There's sometimes just a few seconds lag time.
Okay. Thank you.
That.
I think Exhibit 1 is 6 of 7, I think, in terms of the pages.
Coming up.
Great, thank you. There it is. So what we worked putting together was a finance plan, again, that would repay the entire issue in a 10-year period ending in 2031. We would do the refinancing shown in blue on Exhibit 1 over the same term that it's currently being paid, and we would wrap the new money equipment financing around that so that principal and interest would be paid in 28 through 31, with the overall impact of having basically level payments for 10 years for the golf course operations to fully pay back the irrigation project, which was related to the 2011 bonds that are outstanding, and the new money equipment project, again, all paid back over the 10-year period. we used a preliminary interest rate of 2% we're going to offer this to banks in the area for financing on a 10-year fixed rate basis. Just as a comparison, I worked on a very similar issue, taxable GO promissory note for another community, and the interest rate that we got earlier today was 1.75%. So we think this is a very good representation, a little bit on the conservative side for the interest rates that we're seeing for a financing like this. Michelle, if you could go to the last exhibit, I'd like to make one last point for the council before opening it up for questions. Thank you, perfect. On the refinancing side, the outstanding bonds have interest rates for the 22 through 27 maturity, somewhere in the 4.2 to 4.8, it's showing there at 4.88 rate right now. With the 2% rate available for this type of financing, over the course of the next 6 years, we would estimate savings in a little bit more than $39,000 over that period of time. That's after any costs related to the refinancing. So with the market where it's at, I think it makes perfect sense to refinance this at the same time you're doing any new money. The only other thought that Rand and I discussed was whether there was a thought about paying this off in full rather than refinancing. But in talking with the golf course folks, she felt that they would prefer to have it paid back over time. And I think you have a new lease agreement with them that contemplates that repayment over the 10-year period on the refinancing and the new money. Last thing I was going to mention to the council, again, before opening it up to questions, this financing, a little bit different than the typical government purpose financing that the city does for infrastructure or the project you just talked about potentially for the police facility. This does need to be done on a taxable basis because you have some private business circumstances in this that because that is involved, the city is not able to use tax exempt financing. But as you can see in looking at the interest rates, the interest rate level for pretty much all types of debt, governmental debt is very low interest rate wise right now. And the taxable rates, while certainly higher than tax exempt, are still very low comparatively, and certainly much lower than the rates that the city was paying back in 2011. So last thing, Mayor, what we would plan to do is take bids on this and report back to the council at your next meeting in June. And at that time, if the bids are acceptable to the council, you'll be able to lock in the interest rate at your June meeting. And with that, Mayor, I'll turn it back over for any questions from the council or yourself.
John, I got a question. It's Craig.
Yeah. Yes, Craig.
Give me an estimate on the amount of interest that they would save per year with a $1 million loan at 4.5 versus 1.75, approximately.
Yeah, in terms of how much lower cost?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can kind of extrapolate based on what you see here on Exhibit 2, Craig. So basically for $500,000 at that 4.5%, they're paying $88,000 in interest. If you were to double that for $1 million, you're probably looking at about $170,000. And then at 2%, you're paying about $32,000 in interest over that period on the $500,000. So that'd be about $64,000. So I'd say ballpark, you're probably looking at about $100,000 less in cost
total
with the lower interest rate
for the 10 years.
Over the whole 10 years.
Okay.
So $10,000 a year or $100,000 over 10 years.
Okay.
Lower.
Yep. Thanks.
I got a question for you, Sean.
Carrie.
Oh, go ahead, Carrie, go ahead.
Sorry. Sean, this is Carrie Kraft. I just want to get some clarity around, you call that this $400,000 new equipment debt. Is that also what they had previously financed through a private party? It's not something additional, is it?
No, it is what you're describing, Carrie. I apologize.
Okay.
I think the way I was interpreting is new financing for the city in terms of assisting the golf course in their debt situation. So yes, it is that equipment being transferred from a private debt situation into blending into this situation as a city debt, of which you expect to receive annual payments from the golf course to cover the payments so that you do not have to use other funding sources of the city to make the payments.
Okay. I just wanted to get some clarity around that. I was a little bit worried when I saw new money for golf course equipment.
No, that description was not the best on my part. It as I understand from Rayanne, it is the financing that you referred to.
Okay. Thank you.
Sean, this is Mike. The net effect here is that the golf course is going to be spending something like $10,000 more per year. Obviously, their loan's going to go another 4 years than what their cash flow is right now. But of course, they are absorbing a $400,000 interest-only obligation they had, so which wasn't really reflected in their cash flow other than interest. Is that correct?
Yeah, Rayanne and I looked at a couple different situations, Mike. One was to amortize that $400,000 with a level payment over 10 years, which would reduce the total interest. But the issue was trying to create a cash flow situation that would best position the golf course to make their annual debt commitment to the city to cover the debt and do so within a 10-year window. And so going back to Exhibit 1, that's where that concept was of doing interest only on the $400,000 portion, keeping the overall payments at about $100,000 a year, but paying all debt back in a 10-year period ending in 2031.
Thank you.
How do you want to do this, Mr. Mayor?
I was going to say, any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to offer a motion that we approve this 2021 taxable GO promissory note series 2021A for the Richmond Golf Course, and then also approving the amended lease as well. I guess I'll make them. I think they're connected.
I didn't know if that wanted two separate motions or not.
It's up to you guys.
I think we have to have one motion because it's got to be contingent upon that new lease agreement anyway.
No, that's good. So it's a motion to approve the financing and the lease. And we have a second. Discussion. Hearing none, call the roll.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Breeze.
Yes.
And that motion passes. So now we jump back to 7.1, the Ordinance 552, fats, oils, and grease.
Eric Evenson, our Public Works Director, will be on virtually. And again, we appreciate your flexibility on the agenda this evening so that consultants and outside guests were able to take off earlier. So,
Well, the reality is, no, you always have to have room for fats, oil, and grease. So
there you go. Well, Eric, I'll turn things over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yeah, this ordinance was discussed at last month's meeting. Someone brought up a good point about having some teeth in it and being enforceable. So we made one small change. We did add a penalty to the end of the ordinance. So if someone is non-compliance, we can issue them a citation. And then it also has some language in there as far as someone being non-compliant or a repeat offender if they're causing the city's lines to back up. We could go after them for the costs of remediating or fixing that problem. So besides the penalty, it's the same ordinance that was presented last month. And I guess I'd open it up to any questions that people might have.
Eric, this is Mike. Quick question for you. Understanding that you've got businesses, particularly in the restaurant field, and stuff goes down the drain, and you could have a number of businesses feeding the same main sewer line, how do you necessarily know? I think the penalty phase is a good idea. We're trying to get people, Police Chief Yellick's favorite expression, voluntary compliance. But how do you necessarily know where that grease came from?
Sometimes it's going to take some investigative work. Sometimes we might not know, we might not see it till it hits a lift station or something farther down the system. Other times it might plug up right in their lateral or, just outside their lateral in the main sewer. So we'd have a better indication of who it was caused by. If there's a repeat occurrence, say down at a lift station, or somewhere farther out in the collection system, it takes some investigation work on our part, and we'd most likely go in, as part of this ordinance allows us to start inspecting some of the grease traps at these establishments. And so if we find one that's in non-compliance or hasn't been maintained or something like that, then we could probably go after them, either making sure they start taking care of it, or if it continues to be an offense, issuing a citation. Did that answer your question?
It sure does. I'm ready to offer
Okay.
a motion, but I don't know if anybody else has a question they want to ask. Mr. Mayor, I'm going to offer a motion that we adopt Ordinance 552 with this additional language regarding the penalty.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. I think this is the second reading, so why don't we throw in the suspend the rules?
Yeah, please suspend the rules.
So, let's see. So it's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yeah.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Vries,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
And that motion passes. Item 7.2 is the Downtown Facade Grant Program.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. As we've discussed at previous meetings, I think this has been on the agenda 4 times previously for the facade grant program. For a little history for Alderman Vries, who may not have been involved before, in 2020 and in 2021, the normal funds for the downtown facade grant program were put on hold or were not budgeted for based on COVID times. And so those things were kind of put to the side. We have had a couple of businesses that have inquired about possible changes to their facade. One group in particular actually did their changes and is looking to see if they could get some grant possibilities. So hence this has been brought back up. At the last meeting, City Council members have asked me to look to see if I could find some funds, where we could gather some funds from, since this was not budgeted for. And I've located what I feel is a fair amount, around $5,000. With that amount, we could take that from 3 different sources of funds. So you folks had allocated $10,000 for our community recharge program. We could take some money out of there. We could take it from the reserves, or we could take it from the loan amount that we were going to be paying off. So we have those 3 choices. And I just kind of want to put that out there for discussion and let you folks discuss that.
Beth, this is Mike. So reading through your memo, you've had 3 businesses express an interest. Whether or not that gets approved by that committee, we don't know, but you've had 3 businesses that express an interest in the grant program. Is it 2?
2 businesses, Mike. If I said 3, I apologize. 2 businesses got back to me via email. So you requested me to send an email out to all downtown businesses that would be able to apply for grants. 2 of them got back to me.
Mike, I think to your point, so two property owners, 3 total properties.
That's what it was.
Yep.
So my
3
question
properties,
is,
okay.
my question is that, sorry, I'm trying to bring it up right now, but the technology escapes my abilities. If one business had applied, would the suggestion be that it would be less than $5,000? And I guess the reason why I asked the question is that if we approve this tonight, I'm curious if the 2 interest that you had, and we understand that one project's already been done, would there necessarily be direction given to that committee that, yes, it's only up to a quarter of their project, but would we put a restriction on there that not to exceed $2,500 per business? You're offering $5,000 that you're going to scavenge up somewhere. Would it make sense if they only approved one of those projects? And I don't know really anything about either one, so I'm not going anywhere with this. That it would be limited to 25% or $2,500, whichever number is less. Does that make sense?
Right. I think that's fair since we really have a smaller amount of money that we're working with, since two folks were, wanted to look at those funds, that those get split in half. I think that's a fair way to go about it. And I do apologize. I just looked at the memo that was out there. I think Noah had made some changes on the memo a little bit later. So it looks like there's two sources of funds. And I apologize, Noah, for not seeing that. I thought that it was the memo I had created before. So it looks like the funds could come from Community Recharge Program or surplus from 2020 funds.
We are expecting some additional money coming in.
Yeah.
So if we have the one, so maybe a counter to what Alderman Montello is throwing out there, you maybe fund the one that's already done and it's gone through the committee and has given some feedback. We have some more money coming in. I don't know how far the second applicant, have they applied? They've responded that yes, they're interested, but there may be some more work done on that. And by the time that all happens for the second business, if we've got this other money they were expecting to come in, and is that an option?
Yeah, so they haven't, so only the one, so two of the projects have been completed. So one project owner, they submitted their application last year. It hasn't yet been reviewed by the committee.
And how many dollars are we talking for those, the one that's already done?
You're probably looking at about that $5,000 number. For the
Was
other
that,
project.
I'm sorry, no, was that the total cost?
If it was the 25% amount, their total project for both properties together was kind of between 15 and 20. So again, looking at that 25% number, again, looking at the discretion of the committee. For the other property owner, they have not yet filled out an application. They responded to Beth's email. She emailed all the downtown property owners. They said, yeah, we're interested in a project, but I don't think they've obtained quotes or anything like that yet.
Well, and I think the reason that this came back was because that's exactly what we talked about. The person that already spent this money, we should find a way to get them that money.
Well,
Anybody else in the future that is going to apply, we're going to have some resources coming from the state. We're going to have some other resources coming.
I think without getting into the nuts and bolts of this, we never agreed to do that. They were told specifically last year there was no money in the budget.
Right.
We gave them an exception that said, if we come up with funding,
Yep.
we'll consider their project, because they don't do that. They all have to be approved in advance. So but I guess
That's why it's back here is what I'm saying.
No,
is
I
because
understand
we
that.
considered that and said, you
Right,
spent
but-
the money, we have some money, we have a surplus.
So, but I guess my point is that we didn't put it in the budget this year either.
No.
So what, I'm going to offer a motion that we go ahead and approve to take $5,000 from the Community Recharge Program and put it towards this, with the understanding that when the Historic Preservation Committee considers the grants, that they could award up to the normal 25% of the project, but limited to $2,500 for this go-round. We don't know if we're going to have extra money, but if it comes up, that's something we could look at doing later. I would just as soon make a commitment now to a number, and if there are funds available later, we could turn around and still look at these programs through that lens. I hate making a commitment based on, for something like this one, there's so much we don't know. Because I think one of the comments that was mentioned before, like a month ago, we were talking about, I'm sorry, what's the I want to spend a lot of money, Washington, D.C. program?
Oh, the ARP program.
Oh, that's what they
I know
call
what
it,
you mean,
okay. So anyhow, but I've heard a number, something close to $1 million. And maybe we want to make a decision at that time to put some of that in this program. I think we could leave the window open, but let's just not make a commitment to that. Let's make a commitment with what we know we have, and then consider that when those other funds are available.
So there's a motion, 25% up to $2,500. Is there a second to that motion, so we can at least discuss it? there a second to that motion? Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
All right, so there's a motion and a second, so it's open to discussion. I guess my counter is there's a company or somebody has expressed interest, hasn't applied. They may or they may not. They may apply in 3 months once the manna falls from heaven and we have close to $1 million to talk about again, or they may never. So
Typically, when a project gets approved, they have 12 months to complete the work. They get funded after the project is completed. So in some cases, we may have an application that comes through in June. Their contractor can't start the work till the fall. They may not get reimbursed till after the first of the
be
year.
next year before we pay the money anyways.
But I think to your point, at least I think to your point, if we want to put a requirement that an official request, we have one, but a second official request has to be received by such and such a time, then if the council determines that they want to allow the whole 5,000, my point merely is,
And I hear your point.
we don't know what the second request could be, and it may not be anything. So just based on that, we know we could move ahead on that. If we don't get a second request, then if you want to come back and say, we'll authorize the additional 2,500 if the project's been approved, this just gives that other party who's, and again, I don't know anything about that,
Yeah,
that an opportunity to do
there
that.
may be some money for them.
Mike, I agree with your motion. I agree with where we're reallocate it from the community recharge program, but I'm not in favor of limiting it to 2,500. A year ago, this was, if I'm correct, a year ago, this was taken back because of COVID.
Well,
This year, it was thought about being brought back. It was not put back in the budget, but that's why I'm in favor of the motion on the first two parts, but I'm not in favor of limiting it to 25.
So and it's a valid question. The challenge is that if the historic preservation meets, I don't know, within the next couple of weeks, and they approve the one project that's already done, they don't have a request from the other party. If they go ahead and gave out with no strings attached, the money's gone, right? This $5,000 was allocated based on, and that was my question to Beth, based on having two different businesses in. So if you spend it all with the one, you have nothing to offer the other. That was my point.
But
You
the second,
request
if
from the
the
other.
second offer comes in the next 2 weeks, it probably wouldn't get paid out till next year anyway, until the project completed.
But I will tell you, it's my experience, that's not the way we budget this. It's done based on the year that it's approved, and then the money is set aside for those projects. So in essence, we would be tying the hands of the council next year to go ahead and fund something that was approved this year. That's just not the way we do it. So I don't really understand what the challenge is that you go ahead and, if the historic preservation approves the first project that's already done, they give them $2,500. We still have that $2,500 there. We can give it out later if that's what the choice is. That's all. Because Beth said she's had two different businesses, that's all.
Do we have a guesstimate of when the reinvestment money from manna from heaven, when is it going to fall?
So just
Best guess.
So the league municipalities just today gave guidance in terms of eligibility even. In terms of timeline, Joel left here, but we should have already received the first payment by now. We haven't yet. So they had said it'd be 60 days after it had been approved by Congress. That doesn't appear realistic. So at some point this summer, we would, it looks like we'd receive half the payment in 2021. The remaining half would likely be next year. But still a lot to be determined about what's eligible, what's not eligible. But it does look, that could be for infrastructure projects. It could be for business assistance. So there are some different buckets, so to speak, that you could put dollars into.
And what does $2,500 get you? 4 2x4s right now?
It's tough.
It depends on how soon they get it. I mean, if we wait another month to give it to them, then it's probably down to 3. But I guess what I'd throw out to the council, if this motion passes, as soon as this other federal money comes in, we bring this issue back to readdress how much for the second business, how much for this, if this one passes. I'm just going to throw that out. But any other discussion? Motion is second, call the roll, and this is for up to 25%, up to $2,500. Call the roll.
And just to clarify, and $2,500 per per property.
Per
That be,
business, I believe.
Yeah, I was taking it as per business, because that gets to that issue. When I asked Beth, they said there's 3 applicants. She goes, well, no, there's only 2 applicants. There's 3 properties.
So the one that's already complete is basically talking your $2,500 cap for that,
Right.
both buildings.
okay.
So it's per applicant.
Wait,
Total of 25 is what the motion is at right now.
per person or per building?
For both, of them.
Applicants,
So
per applicant.
1250, 1250, it
Well,
caps out at 25.
however they do it, but per applicant. Beth said
Per
she has, go ahead, Beth, you had 2 applicants, but it's 3 different properties involving those 2 applicants.
That is correct.
And just so you know, my point is, the city went out and asked businesses, and they had this other business that said, hey, we think we're interested. If we spend all the money we have,
Yeah.
then we asked them and we said, hey, we invited you to the party, but we're not gonna let you in. That's all.
If there is, if I may,
You may.
if we get to the end of the year or season, the second applicant has not applied,
I don't think you have to wait that long. If you wanna, I mean, if we wanna approve this and you wanna put a date on there, like, I don't know, what's the next 90 days? I don't think you
If
have to
there
wait
isn't
till
a
the end of the year.
second applicant, Then the entire 5,000 would go to the.
I
First
would not
applicant?
have a problem with that at all. I just wanna make sure we've asked folks, hey, tell us, and somebody said, that's all.
His point is he wants to make sure there's some dollars available for the second applicant if they apply.
I agree with that. I agree with that. I just think that that's going to be an inevitability, that there's going to be extra funds available to that person. And this person's already spent the money. They've done the upgrades. They've done the facade grant. They've done their end of it. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, and I think it's all good. We don't need to wait till the end of
And
the
we
year.
need to find people the money that they are going to spend in the future, because I think this facade grant program is a phenomenal program.
All right, any other discussion? Call the roll?
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
No?
Alderman Vreeze,
No,
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
Passes 4-2. So what I'd say is when we get the other money comes in, let's bring this back onto the agenda.
I'll do you one better than that, Mr. Mayor. Let's 90 days. Somebody has to submit another request, and apparently we've limited it to just this other person who's expressed an interest. If they don't submit a request within 90 days, then we can
I'm
consider to
hoping
fund the rest of the money.
Whichever comes first, either the money or the 90 days.
And they've spent the money long ago, so it's, they're not closing the doors because they don't have this $2,500 extra, so.
Yep, I get it. All right. So we drop down to 8.3, construction services for 2021 street and utility projects.
Mayor Horn and City Council, this item was reviewed by the Utility Commission at their last meeting. We had the bid opening for our street and utility projects. I'll turn it over to Eric Evenson again. Eric, if you'd like to provide a highlight of the bids.
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Noah. Yeah, like Noah said, we had the bid opening for the street and utility project on April 29th. We received 2 bids for the project. The low bidder, A1 Excavating, was just over 1.4 million. Haas Sons was about 40,000 more than them. So pretty close bids. I believe they're pretty competitive bids. I was a little concerned bidding this late in the year of getting elevated prices. I don't think that's the case. I think we got some pretty competitive bids from the 2 contractors. I don't think putting it off and bidding it next year would get us any better prices. So that being said, I guess I would recommend, and the Utility Commission already approved, moving forward with A1 Excavating at the low bid of $1.440575 million. And then as part of this, we also have the contract from SEH to do the construction engineering on the project. And so that would be contract administration, reviews of submittals, some on-site inspection. They will do an easement that is required from the Catholic Church and the surveying involved. So pretty much all the construction services, and that was for $106,700. And it would be our recommendation to also move forward with that contract.
Eric, I've got a question about the lines going into the house themselves. Is A1 prepared to do those for the individual houses? I mean, at a cost, but will they do
Yeah,
that project for them?
Yep, it sounds like they would be open to that. They
Good.
would most likely have to hook up with a local plumber.
Yep.
So to make the actual connection into the house, you have to be a licensed plumber.
Right.
And I don't believe they have someone like that on staff.
So if somebody were to live on Pearson Avenue or 8th Street or wherever their project is going to be done, can we somehow get word to them if they need the hookup to their house redone, a way for them to get a hold of A1 or a plumber or some kind of setup? Because I know a lot of people want to get that project done because if there's a street project in front of their house, they want to do it all at once. Can we somehow notify the residents in that area the process of getting A1?
Yeah, we'll definitely let them know about that.
Okay.
There's a few water services on Pearson that are part of our lead service line project. And so we've been trying to get some plumbers in the area to submit the proper certification to be part of that program. It's a little bit like pulling teeth right now to try and get contractors to commit to anything because of their workload and how far out they're booked. But I think we have a couple now, so that's kind of why we've delayed contacting people about the private side of their services. Is we've wanted to line up some of these plumbers to actually do the work before we kind of push people into doing it.
Do they need to be certified by the state in order for us to be able to run those lines?
They have to be a licensed plumber to make
That's
the
it.
connection into the house. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
But
And
there
I'm
needs to be an
licensed, but I
application. But they have to
No,
get a
I
hold of
don't
us to
believe
say
so.
they're a licensed plumber and they will do this? How does that
Yeah.
work?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically with the lead service line program for people to make use of that DNR funding to pay for the cost of the service replacement, the plumbers have to be part of a qualified contractor list.
Okay.
And so it's just a basic, some forms and stuff that they have to provide to us to prove that they're a qualified contractor.
Okay. Thanks.
Eric, this
Yep,
is
no
Mike.
problem.
Did you have a estimate for this job?
SEH actually provided us with an estimate, an engineer's estimate, and it was just over 1.3 million.
the
So we did
project-
come in
It came
slightly
in-
elevated from that.
Yeah, I was just curious how that what the market is like for that right now. I guess like everything, it's up.
And I think to Alderperson Mantello's comment, it is one thing as well as we look to our 2022 projects, we would like to start the bidding process earlier, which means
Yes.
starting the design work earlier. And I think looking ahead to our projects the next couple of years, we'd also like to be able to do some of that engineering in-house. We do have our own engineer, and so some of this contracted work in the future may not be necessary. But I think even getting bids a couple months earlier may give us a little better pricing. So hopefully that's something we can address moving forward.
It's a
I
fair-
would be,
Go ahead, Carrie.
no, I was just going to offer a motion, Mike. So if you have another question, go ahead.
I was just going to say this, it's like farmers and putting seed in the ground. If you ask somebody, okay, well, tell me what the corn price is going to be 3 years from now, or maybe even next year, not necessarily a known commodity. It's amazing. This has all been pretty static until recently. So just the unknown's really great. Sorry, Carrie, go ahead.
No, I was just going to make a motion that we approve the supplemental letter agreement with SCH for the construction services portion of the street and utility projects in the amount of $106,700. And we also accept the low bid from A1 Excavating in the amount of $1,440,575.
I will second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Breeze,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
All right,
Yep,
and that
one,
motion,
one more, just
Go
a
ahead.
quick one. This is still something we don't know where the money's coming from.
Right, so this will be presented at our work session meeting
Okay.
along with the police project.
Same as the police department. Okay.
So looking at, is it, what portion is financed? Is it 10 years, 15, 20? So Sean from Ellers would be a part of that conversation
Good.
too.
Just making sure that we,
yep. All right, 8.4, custodian of employees' personnel and confidential files policy.
Back in February, City Council did, oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, thanks, Mike. Back in February, City Council approved an update to Ordinance number 549, Section 2-218, which was the records and document retention language. It pertained to adding in human resource personnel documentation. Since that ordinance update, a policy establishing really the custodian of records overall for those documents was drafted, which is supplement to your packet here. Really just outlining that human resources manager would be the custodian of all of those records, personnel files, confidential records, whether that be health-related information, benefit enrollments, et cetera, that all would be housed within human resources, and that department heads, other departments wouldn't have extra copies of that or anything like that. It would all be housed with human resources.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to offer a motion that we approve the custodian of employee personnel and confidential files policy as presented.
second.
There's a motion and second. Is there any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Breeze,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
And that motion passes. Item 8.6 is the housing study for City of New Richmond.
Mayor and City Council, I'm pretty excited to present on the housing study and the information that Forward New Richmond has brought forward. If everyone remembers, in late 2019, 2020, Forward New Richmond recommended a housing study so that we could use it as a marketing tool, a way to get developers into our community with some facts. At that time, when we put out a request for proposal, the proposals came back with a full-blown study and it was around $30,000. It just seemed to be out of the realm of what the council was willing to spend on a study of that nature. So we brought it back to the drawing board. We talked about slimming it down, making it a mini study. I talked to developers, I talked to folks who are coming into town, and talked about their needs for a study. The real need for a housing study is the numbers. It's keeping it current. It's having something to market the city with. So Forward New Richmond approved moving forward with getting quotes from firms on kind of a mini study. So the criteria for the study, we cut down a little bit to get rid of all the bells and whistles. We received those quotes. They ranged from $6,400 to around $29,000. And so Forward New Richmond, Mike Montello was on this group, and a couple of the Forward New Richmond members. We interviewed 3 of the low bidders for this project, and we're recommending going with MSA Professional Services. Their original bid was $9,818. When we talked to them and seen if they could find any efficiencies, they knocked it down a couple of $100 for us. And they also talked with us. We wanted to do an update to this study in 2 to 3 years so that we're always keeping current. So they gave us a number of $2,775 of updating the study before the year 2024. So we would need to budget for that in 22 or 23. So what Forward New Richmond and city staff is recommending is that we move forward with MSA in the amount of $9,618, along with budgeting for $2,775 in the next couple of years for the update to the study.
Mr. Mayor, I want to offer a motion that we approve the housing study to be completed by MSA with the funding as stated in the memo. And also, if I can, I just want to congratulate Beth. I think you did a great job here. Again, just to reiterate something she said, sorry, this isn't part of my motion, but this started off at $30,000 2 years ago or thereabouts. And I would probably categorize it a little bit different, Beth. It's not so much not the bells and whistles, it's the information we need is what we're paying for. And so, but I really think a great job, got even a little bit more consideration. But the company that is being recommended was the overwhelming favorite, not even close.
Yeah. And Mike, I forgot to mention one thing. City staff did, per the recommendation from Forward in Richmond, apply for a grant. We received $5,000 of the $9,000. So we have a really good start. That doesn't even have to come from the city's budget. Really good start.
Very
Second
good.
the motion?
So Mike, you already made the motion, right?
Yes,
So you got the motion, you got the second? All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, this is a good deal. I think that's something that's very necessary. I'm not saying it's not. Is the 2775 part of the motion, Mike? Are we locked into that 2775?
Valid
Yes.
question. And actually, we're locked in it if we want to do it. So if we want an update to our study, they've guaranteed us a price of $27.75. We don't have to spend it. It's just if we want an update in a couple years, which gets back to how good is the data, they're guaranteeing us it won't exceed $27.75.
So what we're going to do is write them a check for 9618.
That is
And
correct.
have an agreement for the 2775 if we need it updated.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Good
Correct.
question. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Vries.
Yes.
And that motion passes. Item 8.7 is the City of New Richmond, Town of Star Prairie Urban Reserve Commission. This was set up as part of the whole boundary agreement with the Town of Star Prairie. It's supposed to be 3 appointees from both sides. I believe Town of Star Prairie's made their appointments, so they're asking us to make ours. I know Alderman Vries would like to be the council member representative. Have we reached out to either the Planning Commission or the?
Haven't reached out yet, but just want to bring it, we can bring those names at the next meeting if we'd like to appoint
Yeah.
Alderman Vries as the council representative. Just wanted to bring this up to the council so you're aware of it. Township will be selecting three individuals as well. We thought it makes sense to have someone from Utility Commission and from Plan Commission,
Yep.
as well as from the council.
So why don't you reach out to the Planning Commission members and the Utility Commission members, find one of each, and then we'll run all three through at the same time, probably
Sure.
at the next meeting.
Yeah, so next meeting agenda, you'll see appointments listed. We'll have all three names there.
All right,
Out of curiosity, who came up with the word urban there? It just doesn't seem to fit these two
Steve.
communities.
that was part of the
Urban
agreement.
Reserve, yeah, that's the language in the agreement, yep, so.
Okay.
That was a long, long process.
Long.
Library building project update.
Yeah, so, Mayor Horn and City Council, just wanted to provide an update to the council this evening as it relates to the library building project. As some of you are aware, we last came in January, myself, Brian Schaefer, who serves as the president of the school board, and Vicky Jovic, who serves as the school district's representative on the library board. We gave presentations to the council, the school board, and to the library board in January. Since then, we went out and gave several presentations, had a lot of meetings this spring with different stakeholders. We also started a request for qualifications process. We received 9 proposals or responses to the RFQ. We've done preliminary virtual interviews, meetings with each of those 9. And at this point, we're looking to begin to narrow that number down and really get a sense of what the council would like to see on that site when it would come to a mixed-use development. What would complement a library, what would complement the neighborhood. And so I am looking this week to schedule some meetings with some of you, likely in groups of 2, and just to hear your thoughts on things you'd like to see or wouldn't like to see on that site. And we'll look to kind of narrow that group down from the current 9 that we have. In terms of a timeline, I've put together a timeline here for the next couple of months that would put us on track to potentially select a developer by the first week of July of the summer. So it's a pretty aggressive timeline, but I think that highlights the importance of the project to the council and to the community, and to the school board as well. This is a project that we've talked about for a long time. It doesn't mean that in July we know what that building is going to look like, but it means that we'll have gone through multiple rounds of interviews. We'll have reviewed financials and hopefully have selected a possible partner. As part of the process, looking back at, some of the reasons maybe why the project hasn't happened over the years, I think one of those things is just having a clear project manager identified. Is it the city administrator? Is it the library director? Who's guiding the project? And I do think it is timely, especially with a new library director coming on board this summer, to identify a project manager. I do think at this point it would make sense for the city administrator to be identified as that project manager. And I say that somewhat biased, being in that role, but I do think it makes sense from the standpoint that we're not picking out wallpaper yet. We're not in the fun part. A lot of this early on is going to be working with the developers, going through legal review, financial review, getting input from community stakeholders, working with the school board. We have presentations scheduled here later this month and in June with some of the townships as well. I wouldn't want to throw and put that pressure on a new person coming in to say, hey, you're in charge, good luck. I also think it's fitting that this is very similar to what we do with our development review committee, where we're getting feedback from multiple staff members before we're just picking out, okay, what is the library going to look like? The big question is, how do you pay for it, right? And what does the community want to see? Those are questions where having someone that can tap into all those different groups and be that central point of contact, I think is really important. So, a couple of things for tonight. I would encourage you to consider identifying a project manager moving forward. Obviously understanding that any decisions on the project have to come to the council. But when it comes to the coordination of meetings, of interviews, of knowing when to pull in different folks, having that central project manager, I think, is really important. And then the other piece, no action is required on this portion, but as it relates to just getting feedback from all of you, that's something you'll be looking to schedule with myself later this week. Likely do groups of 2 at a time and get some feedback from you. And we are doing the same thing as well with the school board. And out of respect to those 9 developers, we don't want them to go through a bunch of interviews and meetings, and then we tell them, actually, we're not interested in that. We hope that even if they're not selected for this project, that they'll consider doing a project in the community, whether it's this year or in the future. And so we don't want, if someone's proposing commercial space or offices or some type of housing, we don't want them to go through a whole process and then we say, oh yeah, that's not what we want. Thanks for nothing. So it's trying to be respectful of their time as well as elected officials and community members as well. There's a lot of fatigue oftentimes with a project like this if you have committee meetings and nothing gets done. But this is a pretty aggressive timeline, but again, we do have until October of this year officially to break ground on the site. Now, it's not to say we're gonna break ground this fall, but we have to be able to show to the school board that we've made a lot of progress. And we do feel this is a realistic timeline. We received a lot of really good quality responses to the RFQ. Some of them have done mixed-use libraries in the past. Some of them have said, we do everything. We want to hear from you what you want to see. We've done commercial, we've done multifamily, we've done single family. We have some groups that have done hundreds of millions of dollars of construction projects. They already know this would be our engineer, this is our architect, this is our investor. So we really think there's a really good opportunity here to move forward with that project. I did attend the school board meeting this evening to give them an update on the project as well. They're comfortable moving forward with this project this time as well. So happy to answer any questions that you have about the update.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to offer a motion that we, in fact, direct our city administrator, Noah Wiedenfeld, to be the project manager of this part of this project, which really involves a lot of talking. As an addendum to that, you do a great job of reporting to the council. I think it'll be great for these folks. Carrie, she's on the room, but as well, to be able to sit with you and talk about what this looks like. And I think really a key point tonight is this isn't a library project. It's a city project with the idea that it's going to involve space for the library. But I know I make some interesting points in there about why this particular project, you could say generally projects have struggled, and it's all right there. So again, I think that Noah be appointed as the manager of this particular part of this project. We're not asking him to build a building, just to get us to a point where these other decisions could be made.
So there's a
I would
motion
second that.
and a second. Any discussion?
I've got, I don't know if I got discussion or not. I need to know from the past. We've done this a lot. We've done this with architects. We've done this with different visions. We've done this with different architects throughout the country. Do we have any agreements with anyone left that we've paid money to that is something we have to consider to, I don't know.
You're asking the question of work.
Was
of
it
work,
McCarthy or McCarty from
Yeah.
Chicago?
Yeah, of work
Has he got
that's-
any agreement
yeah.
left with this?
of work that's been done already, Noah.
Which is
Is
vast.
Yes, a lot of money's been spent.
A lot of money.
And unfortunately, I would say probably not very smartly spent.
No, it hasn't.
I mean, I think it's a valid question. I think I know what the answer is, but go ahead and answer that, Noah.
Yeah, so really right before COVID, everything was put on hold. We were in the process of selecting a fundraising consultant that was put on hold.
Yep.
The architect you're referring to, they have not proceeded to do. We haven't done any work with them now in the past year. So
But
there's
what
no,
Mike,
no obligation.
so we have no obligation financially to say you get first shot at being the architect of this next project at that site?
No, not at this
Okay.
time.
Okay, thanks.
My only comment is it's a big bite of the apple for you.
Noah likes apples.
I know, but there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of moving parts.
Get more
I
apples
wish
to
you
bite
well.
though.
I was gonna say, let's just make sure it's not applesauce. But actually, I appreciate, it's an ambitious, and those are his words, it's an ambitious timeline. But really, it's time for us to be able to answer the question about the
I get it.
viability of this. And so I will tell you, for those of you gonna be having a sit down with Noah, this is really revolutionary. Richmond's never done anything like this before. So it's an exciting new look at a way to maybe get something done.
Any other discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Vries,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
That motion passes. I don't know if to say congratulations, no, or my condolence. Communications miscellaneous. Hearing none. Closed session per state statute, fire chief and ancillary personnel matters in Girard Development, 307 South Knowles Ave.
I'll offer a motion that we go into closed session.
Second?
Motion and second to go into closed session. Call the roll.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Vries,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier, Alderman Montello.
Yes.
Alderman Volkert.
Yes.
All right, we'll take a few-minute break. Make sure the line
Michelle, I don't know if you can hear me, but I lost. I
This
lost cell
conference is
phone.
no longer being recorded.
Hey, Carrie, I can hear you. I just muted the mics
Okay.
in here while we get things reorganized.
Okay, perfect.